the mission was to solve a problem. We want to solve this problem. This is a view of the world we think what the market needs. Then we started getting in customers. Then you start getting in paying customers, etc. And the scaling experience is transcended over a period of time, from going from getting a first customer to, let's say, getting a first million in ARR to next 5 and 10 and so on and so forth. So it's a scalable journey. What you needed to do before is different from what we need to do now, is different from what we need to do a year back, I would say. My name is Savarth Misra. I'm the co-founder and CEO at ContractPod AI.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries who share in the critical moments of what it takes to change an industry and build and lead a team that has your back. I'm your host, Noah Labhart, and today how Savarth Misra is driving digital transformation into the contract lifecycle. All this and more on Code Story. Savarth Misra didn't start out in tech. In fact, he was a lawyer, working as a corporate commercial lawyer in Asia and the UK. During this time, he noticed how little tech adoption was being done in the law profession and how much opportunity was available for solutions to make an impact. He's married with 2 girls, who, in his words, keep him out of mischief. One of his daughters is totally extroverted, and coming from 2 introverted parents, he and his wife are still trying to figure out where she got it from. In his prior profession as a lawyer, Savarth thoroughly understood how contracts were done. He also noticed how little tech adoption was present, which directly impacted the effectiveness of contract management in general. He figured it was only a matter of time before this industry, his industry, was disrupted by tech. This is the creation story of ContractPod AI.
ContractPod is a legal technology platform. We are a SaaS business selling into the enterprise space, selling into the persona of legal departments. Basically, the mission here is when legal is trying to solve an enterprise problem. So we always try to lead with what we call contract lifecycle management, which is effectively how do you manage contracts in an enterprise or a company. So everything from how do you draft contracts, how do you review contracts, how do you negotiate contracts, the full end-to-end cycle of contract management from a technology perspective is what we support. So it's a SaaS software, it's in the enterprise place. Like I said, sort of going back, how did we get started? My background is in the law, so I was a corporate commercial lawyer, so I suppose I wrote contracts, drafted contracts, reviewed contracts. So kind of understood how contracts are done, but also looked at how less technology traction there was within the profession to adopt technology which could support faster, most effective contract management. And I think that's where I saw me and my co-founder, who's also a lawyer by background, he was a partner in a very large law firm for years and years and years. We kind of got together thinking around, hey, there's a market gap here. The question which was very clear in our mind was that this was a market which was very much ripe for digital transformation. The question always was not whether it will happen, it was when. So it was not a if question, it was a when question. I think one of the big bets we took early on, therefore, was that the way contract management is managed within enterprise is really not fit for purpose. B, there's too much fat in the process, and this is going to be ripe for from a technology transformation perspective as an industry. And, that's how we thought we'll scratch our heads, change profession, and build a product out.
So tell me about the MVP. So that first product you built, how long did it take to build, and what sort of tools did you use to bring it to life?
I think when we kind of decided we were going to do this, one of the smarter things I suppose one did was that what was very clear to us is, and I had like a lot of entrepreneur friends, and there's, entrepreneurs always struggle with, do you get a product when it's perfect? Do you get an MVP? When do you get an MVP? What does that look like? I think because also we were very bootstrapped, we did this in a bootstrap manner, and that's bootstrap with a capital B and sort of bold from that perspective. We put a design together and we kind of gave ourselves 6 months to build the MVP. One of the things, I suppose, again, going back, which we did smarter was to say that, hey, we're going to test this MVP out. We will provide the basic features you need, in our view, to run a contract management software within an enterprise. This was kind of going back to around 2014. And the way the market looked at that stage was that majority of the enterprise rollouts in the contract management space were sort of the old-fashioned way of buying technology. You do a one-time capex and then you do a ongoing sort of maintenance plan. This was also the stage where, even in this space, cloud computing and sort of SaaS had become quite a trendy modern concept. So I think what we were very clear on when we were building this was that we want to build a SaaS model out. We will put it on the cloud. We will try as much as possible to build a configurable system versus what was out there in the market at that stage in many ways were systems which needed larger implementations, a lot of customizations, and they were code-based individually for each enterprise. And I think we went with the philosophy of that, scalability is SaaS has more scalability. And therefore, and in many ways, you discipline yourself in building a product which you think can kind of sort of meet that market demand. So we gave ourselves 6 months, and actually we kind of, because it was bootstrap, we ran on time as well. From that perspective, we hired a bunch of developers out of Mumbai and India, and we got it together. And one of the things we had to do when you bootstrap was we had to get it to market. So, and what we thought was, if we're going to fail, we fail fast here, right? And I think that's one of the key things we did. We actually did get it to market pretty soon in 6 months' time. So before the end of 2014, we got it to market, launched it at an event in Amsterdam, which had a sort of following of a lot of general counsels meeting there. So that's how we got started.
You touched on a couple of things I'm going to ask about in your MVP explanation, but I want to open it up a little bit for decisions and trade-offs, right? Tell me about the decisions and trade-offs, dig into them, about you had to make with the MVP in that short amount of time, and a limited amount of resources as a bootstrap team, and how you coped with those decisions.
One of the things we looked at were also when we were building something like contract management, there are a bunch of things you need to have in terms of a feature set. One of those things are things like integration or sort of electronic signatures, this was a period where folks like DocuSign were coming up, right? They were like doing well, but they were still a scale up. They were still private at that stage, certainly. And it was also the market has just started adopting electronic signatures. So the decision making was that, in our view, was very clear. Whereas when we're building that MVP, where are we going to add value, and where are things which are going to be technologies we will repurpose? So when we thought about things like electronic signatures, the choice was, do you build that up or do you use a best-in-class software to integrate with it? So those were kind of decisions we took pretty early on. Again, we said, hey, we've got to think about design innovation, which is about how do we build a utility kit which is going to solve a problem of a legal department on an enterprise. So we want to offer them a solution which has the best-in-class technologies wrapped around it together. Some we're going to build, some we're going to repurpose. So when we think about a classic example, that would be electronic signatures. We were like, well, actually, we don't want to be an e-signature shop. We understand how critical that is to contract management. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to actually integrate with that out of the box to all our customers versus kind of try to build that up. Things similarly around search capabilities around Azure. So we also, because we were on cloud, one of the decisions we took early on was we're going to be a Microsoft shop. So everything we built is on Microsoft technology. And again, sort of thinking around that sort of strategy was that if you had search capabilities, do you build a search engine from scratch, or do you use stuff like Azure, which already had phenomenal cognitive searchability? So again, that was a decision which we took, and those were the kind of compromises we took. Also, like you rightly said, you can't build everything else when you're building MVP. So it's all about what in my view, step one decision making is what do you kind of build versus what do you repurpose? Step two is when you build, where are you building it from a roadmap perspective? And that goes back to us thinking around, here's what you really need that MVP to look like if you're authoring documents. Here's what a roadmap may look like if that was successful, I suppose.
This episode is sponsored by Vanta. You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. And obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors. But they take time and energy, pulling you away from building and shipping. And that's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups like yours get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. How, you ask? Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. And the platform connects you with trusted VCSOs to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. Join over 8,000 companies, including many Y Combinator and Techstars startups who trust Vanta. Simplify compliance and get $1,000 off at vanta.com/codestory. That's VANTA.com/codestory. This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. Between juggling client meetings, managing your website, and keeping up with everyday tasks, who has the time to stress out about website security? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of, so you can focus on what you do best. Kinsta provides managed hosting for WordPress, offering lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Kinsta provides enterprise-grade security, being one of the few hosting providers for WordPress with SOC 2 and other certifications, guaranteeing the highest level of security for your website. Thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition for you from other hosting providers. Customers have reported 200% faster load times post-migration to their platform. What I find cool about Kinsta is their fast and reliable customer service and premium features that are included at no extra cost. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. That's KINSTA.com. Perfect segue. You mentioned the word roadmap. I'm curious how you progressed the product from there and how you matured it. And in that, I'm curious how you built your roadmap and how you went about deciding, okay, now this is the next most important thing to build.
In my view, when you build products and when you build roadmaps, there are sort of two things which are 101. Number one is, and especially when you think about roadmap and product from an innovation perspective, I always believe that the big bang innovation comes from entrepreneurs sort of / founding teams who go like, here's the status quo, we think that world needs to change, and here's a big bang which is things which probably even a customer doesn't see, right? Because you're bringing things to market which they've not seen before. You're changing the rules of the game in many ways. So I think the way we thought about contract management as an example was there were a lot of modular solutions in the market. Like there were things folks did, but they did point solutions around, let's say, authoring or reviewing contracts or reporting or analytics. We thought what the market needed was with significant majority of the market needed was an end-to-end solution, which was scalable, SaaS-based, etc. So our view of the world was a bit different. Our view of the world also was we built with the persona of a legal department in mind, and this going back now kind of 8 years. At that time, majority of the buyers of contract management used to be either sales folks or folks in procurement in an enterprise. They weren't really lawyers. Lawyers were maybe influencers in the process. They were nowhere decision makers. So really, when we designed, this was a software designed by lawyers in many ways for lawyers in mind. So I think there was focus on that and a sort of an obsession to solve that problem. And this was a stage where, let's be honest, absolutely next to no one was doing it, because when I spoke to a lot of smart people, they said, well, you're building it for lawyers, but remember, these guys don't have budgets to buy technology, and they most certainly don't have any budget to buy contract management system, which is also factually true. But the big bet we took at that stage was to say, actually, that's a macro trend we believe is going to change. because, folks who write contracts, build workflows, really design that full process and actual contracts, having no say in the technology they buy made no sense. And I thought that was a trend which will change, and kind of 8 years forward, that's massively changed. So that was a big bet. So the big bang around building or designing with a persona in mind, building in an end-to-end solution, that's the kind of stuff from a product perspective we did and continue to pivot on. So the big bang innovation, I think always from a roadmap perspective, is a point of the view from an entrepreneur or a founding team to say, hey, here's what the world needs to look like in this space. But then also is that, what's critical then is the second bit of that is customers, right? As we started getting in customers and feedback, those were the sort of what I would say incremental changes or incremental roadmap changes which we make when we learn and experience, and people go like, well, actually this needs to change and this is what we think it should look like. So you're going to learn and you're going to change and iterate. But my view of the roadmap always is to my team is there's going to be a big bang, and there's going to be incremental change. And I think most successful companies need to do both if they're to be ahead of the game.
Well, then let's switch to team. So how did you go about building your team? And what did you look for in those people to indicate that they were the winning horses to join you?
I was very blessed and still am blessed, I suppose, that the first bunch of folks we kind of brought into the business, 8 years looking forward, are still with us. I think that's a blessing. That means it was a bunch of folks who had a view of the world which kind of matched, and they kind of brought that together. So this has been a team effort from that perspective. What I typically have looked at our own culture and thinking the folks who've always done well here, and certainly what I look at from an executive perspective are three fundamental things, which is very hard to find, firstly. And this is about trial and error as well in many times, and we've all got it wrong as well. So that's being kind of candid and honest. But the three things fundamental, which I think is, if it ties into contract ports culture, are low ego, coachability, and high level of competence. Now, that's a very difficult, deadly combination to bring in. But I just think when you get that right, you really get it right.
That is a lethal combination. It does sometimes feel like you're searching for unicorns, but I do get those qualities then.
Because if you think about culture, generally if you think about how the markets have changed and personas have changed, how workforces have changed as well, right? Executives, the way they operated in the 90s, in the early 2000s, I don't think that works anymore, to be honest, right? I think we all have to be very cognizant about the new modern workforce, which is very much more self-aware, dare I say, than certainly I was when I was starting off, right? That time the culture was you just get things done. It is what it is, right? I think now people are more sort of self-aware. If you think about the COVID stuff and stuff like that, I think there is much more self-awareness in a good way, in my view. So you need teams who are able to pivot and transcend into it. So when you bring in folks who are coachable / flexible, they're easily pivotable, right? Because the conventional model always has been that, the right people at the right stage of a business. I think that still holds true. Entrepreneurs, it's easier for them to pivot because, let's be honest, what choice do we have? If we're in a mission, you've got to pivot. The pivot faster, stakes are higher. Therefore, the ability to change is much faster. Workforces in general, otherwise, are like, well, we were doing things this way 2 years back. Why do we need to change? And I think when you get that combination of folks who understand change or want to excel in that, and therefore are coachable enough to do it, that's where you get it right. And like I said, that's very hard to find, but that's been one of the secret recipes. Over a period of time, we've been able to find the right folks.
Let's talk about scalability. So did you build this to scale efficiently from day one, or have you been fighting this as you've grown and gained traction?
The mission was to solve a problem. As we started scaling, so it was all about, we want to solve this problem. This is a view of the world. We think what the market needs. Then we started getting in customers. Then you start getting in paying customers, etc. And, the scaling experience is transcended over a period of time, from going from getting a first customer to, let's say, getting a first million in ARR to in the next 5 and you're 10 and so on and so forth. So it's a scalable journey. What you needed to do before is different from what we need to do now, is different from what we needed to do a year back, I would say. I always have started to put ourselves, set goals for years and look at from that journey onwards. There's obviously an end mission, but the mission is to change the needle in the market. It's not very much driven on a number or stuff like that. It's about how do you change the rules of the game there. But more and more from a product perspective and team perspective, scalability comes over time. You kind of, as you start getting investment in things like that, you learn a lot. You fail. I always say I'm some of my failures in many ways, but you got to fail. I mean, if you're not failing, then you're missing something in my view. So I think that comes with more experience, and as the maturity model of your own business changes, scalability comes naturally, or that's front and center to everything you do. It's probably not what you need in day one as well, because there's a lot of stuff around frameworks around how to operate businesses. I think one of the things we were a bit, I would still think in hindsight, looking backwards, the fact that we probably bootstrapped the business for, I would say, a relatively longer time than what's usual in the enterprise SaaS place may not have been a bad move, because we pivoted our business model so many times. If we had invested, we were like, gee, get it together. So I think from that perspective, I think we were kind of lucky, and it was the right thing to do.
So as you step out on the balcony and you look across all that you've built, what are you most proud of?
The team, I think, hands down. I mean, that's an easy one, comes very naturally to me. When I look at, a bunch of folks who have really earned their stripes and have been together, believed in a mission, which, let's be honest, when I look back, I was like, okay, that would be a hard one to believe in, because, you have an ambition, but, they've left the comfy careers to really sign up. Certainly the early bit of the team, which is still there, really proud of them, because it's true, one person can't build a scale-up business. And I think it's just really proud of the guys who've been able to kind of work, believe in it, work with resilience, with relentlessness, and really being mission-driven, I think.
So let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
God, I could write a book on that one, so let me just figure those ones out. I mean, this is probably, that it's a mistake or not, I don't know, but I think the one decision one could kind of argue could have been done probably in two ways was, like I said, I think we probably remained bootstrapped for, I would say, 12 to 24 months longer than what would be usual. What then happened was that you go from being a bootstrap business, which was hustling and doing really well, to thinking about scaling up. And those are two very different things. So the operational capability, when you pivot that, and this is going back probably 2018, 2019, then that becomes a larger gap. Because when you bootstrap, you're looking at every dollar going out and not really focusing around as much as you ought to, I suppose, around the operation capability. Sometimes you need to sort of also build in when you're scaling and you're actually doing well and your product is selling/doing well. So maybe, I mean, if hindsight view, I suppose, could have been that maybe we should have raised a bit earlier than we did. And maybe that 6 months of pain around building those operational capabilities and stretching teams out of more than they ought to have been stretched could have been been done differently.
Well, what does the future look like for Contract Pod, the product, and for your team?
Yeah, the future is bright. No, that's I think for us, again, going back, I think we're very clear and very focused around our mission as a product and as a team. We want to lead as a one legal platform, which is a consolidation of applications which a legal department needs, leading from contract lifecycle management, but being able to also solve other enterprise problems for legal. That's our kind of, in many ways, a differentiator from where the market in general is. We believe that's what we want to do for the next 3 years. And I think the team kind of buys into that. And I'm also a firm believer around, from a team perspective, around getting people at the ground level and seeing them accelerate their careers within this business, because we have a long way to go, especially if you're mission driven or changing or moving the needle in the market. And I think I want to make sure the team who come in at the ground level have a really good career path here and excited about that as well, are excited about making their career path here and making this their home for the next several years.
Well, Savarth, let's switch to you. Who influences the way that you work? You name a CEO, a CTO, an architect, really any person that you look up to, and why?
I mean, one of the talents I never had was music. So, I mean, I can't sing for saving my life, I think, but I've always been a fan of the Beatles, I suppose, going back. And maybe it's down to my folks who kind of, when kids should be doing nursery rhymes, or I was sort of singing, I suppose, Beatles songs. My mom was a big fan, sort of, she grew up in the 60s, I suppose, was there. But I think just what fascinates me around collaboration and partnership around just out of the market space. I mean, there's influence on the technology side, but in general, has been looking at their career and what, as a collaborative for folks they did, and just the talent of Lennon-McCartney kind of songwriting duo had conflicts. We all know about that. There was a great series, I think I recently saw, a long one, Let It Be, I suppose it was Get Back, sorry, not Let It Be, Get Back on Apple. And it was a very phenomenal, just seeing them work together in the middle of conflict. They were all sort of conflicted, but gosh, the kind of stuff they did together, I mean, that music is still so current, and the songwriting is phenomenal. And one of the things I was talking to my team about a couple of weeks back was about that they ended up, I mean, John Lennon and Paul McCartney ended up having great careers, broadly good careers on their own as singulars, artists as well. But gosh, that combination of bringing people together and what kind of they did together has never been replaced, I think. So that's kind of influencing on what I always tell the guys as well, that what we can do and achieve collectively is different from us doing it one by one. That's my view. So I think that's always been a big influence. And so is the songwriting in many ways, on a more philosophical view. Technology side, I think, I mean, sort of growing up saying probably Steve Jobs, I would say, not for anything else, but I think one of the great marketeers of his generation. I think we talk about innovation and we talk about the stuff he did from design innovation, and I'm probably a bit more obsessed with design innovation in any ways possible. So I think there's a bit of a resonation, not that I'm saying anything like Steve Jobs from any stretch of imagination, but I think certainly something around design innovation, thinking about that from changing the world from a design innovation perspective is there. But also one of the great marketeers, right? If you go back to the Super Bowl and stuff which nobody had done before, or, people had hedged their bet, that'll be a complete disaster. Just as a marketeer, I think, in the last 100 years, probably very, very influential.
Well, we talked about a mistake earlier, but a little bit different spin. If you could go back to the beginning, what would you do differently, or where would you consider taking a different approach? And that can be with Contract Pod or anywhere.
I think, in many ways I think the dots connected in my view. I find myself to be so far incredibly lucky. Talent is questionable. But certainly incredibly lucky how the dots tied up. So I think I feel blessed and incredibly lucky. I don't think I would do this any differently. I think it's just something that I thrust over me, and which was just kind of accidental, perhaps. When I think about it now and think, gosh, what was I thinking? Lawyer, doing reasonably okay, picking up technology, not knowing how to code a single word. And then at a time which, it was a good job one had as well. But taking those risks, having fear and failure. But one of the things which sort of coming out of it certainly has been that one of the things probably was resilience, which stayed. But I would not change a thing, do it differently, because even the failures, I think you need to fail, in my view, to succeed. But I suppose fail fast as well. So don't think I would do anything differently, to be honest.
Well, last question, Savarth. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world. Can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit? Don't fear failure. Enough said, I suppose. Do not fear failure, because if you fear failure, don't be an entrepreneur, I think. There's a lot of romanticism about being an entrepreneur. There are moments when
you've been one as well, and you are one, I suppose. And one of the things is that in the end of the day, you're staring yourself in the mirror every night, right? For all the good and the bad as well. It's a lonely place. It can be a lonely place. Let's be honest. The buck stops at you. It's a lonely place. But the only thing I would say is when you're going out, especially if you're young, don't fear failure.
I think that's fantastic advice. Well, Savarth, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling the creation story of Contract Pod AI.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Noah.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. Support the show on patreon.com/codestory for just $5 to $10 a month. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
Taxes was feeling so stuck. Sitting in traffic, squeezing into a parking spot, all to squeeze in getting tax help during your lunch break. Now Taxes is a TurboTax expert who does your taxes for you, while you go about your day getting real-time notifications about their progress and the most money back guaranteed. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile apps. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.